Hello, and welcome back to Healing Mama podcast. I am Healing Mama, aka Val. Today, we will be talking about parenting while broken and my experience and how that's worked for me. So, we will get started with a quote. I have two today. The first one is, "Your kids will figure you out eventually, the kind of parent, partner, and person you are. They'll either be someone they admire or someone they don't want to become." And that's by the Motherhood Reset. The second quote is, "Children must never work for our love. They must rest in it." And that is by Dr. Gordon Neufeld. So I relate to both of these. With the kids will figure you out eventually, that's 100%. I feel like kids are very aware, and as much as we don't want to see it or recognize it sometimes, they're truly aware of our surroundings. They're picking things up all the time, good, bad. They see how you're talking to yourself, if you're talking good about yourself, if you're talking bad about yourself, how you're treating others, and then they in turn do those same things. So definitely they do see who you are, and they do start to recognize, okay, I'm comfortable with this person. I'm not comfortable with this person, whatever the case is. And then children must never work for our love. They must rest in it. That one really resonated with me. I always wanted to make it my goal that my kids felt loved by me. Since I never felt like I had that unconditional love, the "I'm going to love you regardless" type of love. And me and my husband were talking about it a while back. I told him, in this world, in all reality, the unconditional love that people, and maybe I'm saying it wrong, but this is my take on it. The only time we are truly loving somebody unconditionally is when it comes to our children. And sometimes that's not the case for some parents, but in my case, it is. So, I explained to him, I love you as my husband. You're my best friend. You're my partner. But there is conditions to that. The conditions are, I do need to be respected. You do need to be faithful. So it's love, but there are conditions to that. For my children, I love them unconditionally. I tell them all the time, there isn't anything you can say or do that will make me stop loving you. So it is 100% unconditional love. From the bottom of my heart, I cannot think of anything that would make me be like, hey, you know what? I'm going to cut you off. But there's nothing that they can say or do that will make me stop loving them. They are my children, and that's the only type of love that I can see as unconditional. And maybe I'm wrong. This is just my experience and my thought process and my beliefs. And so I do feel like that's the only type of relationship that is the case where we're not looking at people with requirements and expectations in order for them to be worthy of our love, or in order for us to give that to them. And so for the parenting while broken, I always felt like I wanted to make it my goal to raise children who didn't have to heal from their childhood. And now, while I've dived deep into this journey of healing, I don't feel like anybody's able to escape trauma. In some form or fashion, we all have some kind of trauma or issues that do need healing. So now looking back at it, I don't think that's realistic, because nobody's perfect. So therefore, I have caused trauma to my children. I have done things or said things that have affected them and will maybe affect them for the rest of their lives. And the only way that, that if they can get past it is if they decided they want to work on it on their end, or they come to me and they're like, hey, let's sit down and have a conversation. Like, this is how I felt. My goal was to raise kids that didn't need to heal from their childhood. And I've had conversations with them, and I've told them, hey, do you feel like there's something that I've done in your life that has caused you trauma, or that you're trying to heal on, or that, you look back and you're like, hey, I wish you didn't do this. And I've had those conversations with both my son and my daughter. And both of them had said yes. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I'm perfect and I have never messed up and that my kids don't have any issues. So, my son has said yes, my daughter has said yes, and sometimes they range, and I don't want to speak on their lives, their stories, or their personal traumas, because that's not my place. My job is just to speak on my own. So I will tell you that my son and my daughter have both said yes. I've done things that have affected my son tremendously. And when we sat down and had that conversation, he is not really a sharer. So, him and I have these twice a month mother-son dates where, we sit down, we talk. I want to get familiar with his current situation, what's going on at school, what's going on with the friends, things like that. So during that time, that's my time to have those conversations with him that I feel are important. And so recently I asked him, hey, are there things that I've done or said that have affected you in your life? And he's like, yes. Do you remember this time? And I'm like, 100%. And he's like, that really messed me up. Like, it messed me up on my social skills and how I was. And so, I looked at him and I told him, I'm sorry. And he told me there's nothing you can do to get that time back. Like, what's done is done. And 100%. And I told him there isn't anything that I can do to get that time back. There isn't if I could reverse time, I would. And I would change things and I would look at things in that situation a bit more in depth and not so selfishly, because I did make a decision based on my own wants and needs and desires. And that in turn affected him. And so, I apologized and he said, I can't get that time back, we'll leave it alone. And maybe he's not ready to talk about it and fully, get mad at me, because he's, in all reality, he's allowed to get mad at me. He's allowed to tell me, hey, you did this and this really jacked me up. And when he's ready, I'm ready. I don't ever want my kids to feel like they can't tell me something, or they can't tell me, hey, mom, you really hurt me when you said this, or you really hurt me when you did this. And it could be the biggest of the smallest things. For example, my daughter, she hates it. She had brought it up to me a couple years back. It's that typical, you tell your kid, hey, I need you to do this. And they say, why? And you're like, because I said so. Or because I'm your mom and you need to listen to me. And one day she stopped me in my tracks because she told me, that's not a real answer. And I was like, what do you mean? She was like, because I said so, or because you're my mom is not a real answer. And I sat there and I was like, she has a point. That's not a real answer. I wasn't communicating with her, hey, I need you to clean your room because it's getting out of hand. We're going to have guests coming, or it's getting out of hand and I need you to just be on a routine to where it's nice and neat, versus because I said so. That is just I'm pounding my chest, I'm pissing on my territory, saying like, because I said so, you're gonna do this, in a sense. And so I didn't realize that until she stopped me in my tracks. And so I had worked on it and I was trying to do my best to not say that. And so I would catch myself and I would be like, because I need you to do this so that we can get to X, whatever it was. And so that's what I'm saying. It can be the smallest thing to the biggest thing. Just having that communication with them is super important for them to feel like they can tell me something. So really, it's tough being a parent. And that's why I do look at the relationships that I had with my parents, my childhood, what I went through. And I do try to come and see it from a point of grace, because I'm in those shoes now. I know that everything that I do it with the best intent. But it doesn't mean that I won't make mistakes. It doesn't mean that I'm perfect. It just means that I have to have that communication so that when I do mess up or I do hurt my kids, they feel comfortable to tell me. And to me, that's very important on the healing part. And so I always looked at it growing up with everything that I went through, how I didn't feel loved, how I didn't feel protected. I wanted to give that to my kids. So I in turn looked at it as I'm going to do the complete opposite of how I was raised. And so I did my best to do that. I did my best to tell them all the time, to where sometimes I could feel them getting annoyed with me. So I was kind of putting my traumas on to my children, because I would tell them like, I love you so much. Do you know that I love you? And they'd be like, yeah, I know you love me. And I'd be like, but do you feel it? And so that was me pushing my trauma onto them. And they're like, yeah, I just told you, we know you love us. And so I was like so scared for them to feel like unloved or feel like they were not important to me, that I was pushing that trauma onto them, to where I kind of like, when they told me like, hey, yeah, that's enough. Like, we know you love us. Calm down. Don't be crazy. I realized the crazy. And so that was an eye opener for me, because I was like, okay, you need to calm down, Val. Like, you're pushing your trauma onto them. They feel it. And that's enough. Like, don't push it so much. And so that is like something that has been hard for me, because sometimes I just want to know genuinely if they feel loved, or if they feel like they're lacking love, and what I can do to fix that, because I don't ever want them to feel like they're not loved. I know that they're teenagers and they're getting to this stage where they're kind of doing their own thing. You know, my son's working, going to school, driving himself to and from. He's getting to this age to where he's starting to not need me as much as when he was little. And my daughter is becoming this teenager who has her friends and she wants to go out and do her thing. And so I'm entering this new stage of lives where I have to realize that slowly but surely they're going to be on their own, and I have to trust that I have loved them enough from the bottom of my heart and provided them the best motherly experience that I could, or that I was capable of. And so expressing love to me is huge. Physical touch, I'm a hugger. I kiss them, I squeeze them. And now that they're teens, they hug me back, but with their hands down to the side. So I'm like, no, put your arms around me. I want to show them love in every sense of the word. Physical love. I want them to feel my love emotionally. I want them to feel supported. And so that's half of it for me. The second half of it is, since I am parenting broken, or I don't want to say broken because that sounds so ugly, but I am on this journey of healing and I'm a parent, I have had to learn to love myself. So I'm trying to teach them how to love themselves, even though I'm still learning to love myself. And I feel like that's something that I probably have not been the best at. That if I had to say pass or fail, I would say maybe I failed at, because I just came into this healing journey. I just started to truly work on myself and love and accept myself for who I am and how I am and my faults. And I feel like because I'm coming into this at a later stage in their lives, I don't know if I necessarily did the best that I could in teaching them, hey, it's okay to love yourself. I would always tell them, like, love who you are, accept yourself. But I don't know if I was practicing what I preached. So in turn, you know, for example, we'll put it with my daughter. I would look at myself and I'd be like, man, I've gained so much weight and this is how I used to be. And oh, I'm fat. And so in turn, I started to see she was doing that on her end. So she was looking at herself and she's like, yeah, I'm not happy with this. Like, I want to lose weight. And so she was mirroring me. And so it kind of goes back to that quote of what I'm giving and what I'm putting out, my kids are going to mirror. So if I'm mirroring lack of self-love, lack of respect for myself, anger, whatever the case is, my kids are going to mirror that. They pick that up. They picked up that energy. They pick up that vibe. And so I've seen that. And that's something that like I said, if I had to grade myself, I would say as a parent, I did fail at that. I came into the game too late. And that's not to say that it can't change, because they are still growing. They are still teens. They will, grow into adults. But that's something that now, since they are no longer children and sponges, they have to want that. Versus if I taught them early on self-respect and self-love, I would say more so the self-love, because I do feel like they respect themselves But the self-love side of things and the, hey, I'm fine the way I am. God made me like this. So now I'm at the point where, they are teenagers and I am trying to be intentional about my actions, about my words, because even though they're teenagers, they're still picking up on everything. So if I say something, I want to be a person of my word and follow up on those actions. And so I always tell my son, hey, I want you to be a man of your word. If you say you're going to do something, do it. Don't let people be like, oh yeah, I know that guy. And if he says something, he's not going to come through. It's going to fall through. And so really trying to teach them to be intentional about their words and their actions, and trying to raise them to be good human beings that are going to respect themselves, respect others, that are going to put good out into the world. And I remember it was probably about like 5 years ago. My son was younger, maybe like 10 or 11, and it was freezing cold outside. And like so cold, like nobody should have been outside. So we stopped by Starbucks because I was like, you know what? I want a hot chocolate. Do you want a hot chocolate? By Starbucks, we got a hot chocolate. We got banana bread. And so I asked for an extra banana bread and an extra hot chocolate. And so my son's like, what are we doing? And I'm like, just hang tight. Like, you'll see right now. And so we drive up. There was this homeless man and he was sitting in the corner, bundled up, and it was freezing. And I felt bad for him. So I'm like, what can I do to help him feel warm, to help him get a little heat in his body? So I drove up and I was like, excuse me. He got startled, and then he looked up and I said, I got this for you. He got it. He was very quiet, very shy. I said, thank you. He took off, and I'll never forget. As we drove off, I turned around and I looked at my son's face and he was smiling. And I said, why are you smiling? And he was like, because that was really nice. And so I told him, hey, I just want to help somebody out. We don't know his story. We don't know the background, and he's outside and he's a human being. He deserves to be inside and be warm. And I can't give that to him. So the next best thing is for me to do what I can. And if I can get him a hot cocoa and a banana bread, that's the least that I can do. But to see the smile on his face and to know that that was a moment that he took in really was worth it, in the sense of, I was like, okay, this is my job as his mom. My job is to help raise him to be a good human being. And so there's a lot of ways that, what we do on a day-to-day basis as parents affects our children. And I feel like it's not just our traumas that affect our children's lives. It's also how we are now, our day-to-day. And so, for example, for people who are going through separation or have gone through divorce, and you're single parent and you're doing it on your own, your babies can see you. They see what you're doing. They see your efforts. They see that, mom or dad is doing it on their own, and they're taking me to school and they're doing my after school events, and they see that and they will never forget it. I promise you, they'll never forget that. They will hold that dear to their heart, because at the end of the day, you remember those things. You remember who was there for you. You remember who showed up. And so I want to tell you, if you're going through that, kudos to you. Keep going. You got this. Your babies see you, applaud you for holding strong, because it's not easy. You're hurting. You're broken. You probably feel like there's days you don't want to get out of bed and you're dreading it, and you still get up and it's like your cup is already empty, but you still find that final bit of love to give, and then it refills with your babies showing you their love. But I want to tell you too that there's help out there. There's help if you're struggling and you feel like, you know what, I can't get out of bed today and I am a mess. I'm depressed. I can't do this. There's help. Reach out to people, reach out to therapists, reach out to friends, family. If you don't have anybody, again, reach out to me. I'm here to listen. I've been there. I've done that. And so just know that your babies do see that. Your babies do see that while somebody left or the situation didn't work out, who's showing up. And that is something that they won't forget. So I give you all kudos because that is so amazing. And so it's not, like I said, just about parenting while broken isn't just about childhood traumas. It's about current situations. You can be broken now and affecting your children. Look at it like this. What did I lack as a kid? That's in turn what I try to give my children. And that's from the unhealed part of me. But then in turn, my kids aren't me. So I do need to ask my children, my son, my daughter, hey, is there anything as your mother that you feel that you need that I'm not giving you? And that way I can give that to you. If you feel like you need space, hey, I will give you space. If you feel like you need more love, I will give you more love. Is it physical love? Is it, me being supportive? Whatever it is, but asking your children and not being afraid to have that conversation with them. Because I feel like a lot of the times parents look at it as, I'm your parent. I'm right here. You're down here. You're going to do what I say, and that's it. And that's not how I see it personally. My children are God's gift to me. And so I need to respect them. I need to love them. I need to treat them as human beings, not lesser than. And not to say that we're equal in the sense of, you can do whatever you want. No, I am still your mom, but in the sense of I'm your mom, this is my responsibility to nurture you, take care of you. I'm not your dictator. I am your guardian. I am the person who gave birth to you, and God gave me the ability to watch over you and keep you and nurture you in any way that I can. And so not being afraid to have that conversation and ask, is there something I could do better as your parent? And I feel like old school mentality isn't that. It's, you know what? I'm not your friend. And it's not the fact that I'm trying to be friends with my kids. I love my kids and I respect them and I treat them as equals. But they know at the end of the day, mom has to put her foot down. Mom's going to put her foot down. But that doesn't mean that I'm your dictator and what I say goes and you don't get a word in. And that's not how I personally parent. I ask my kids like, hey, what do we think about this? What are the pros and cons? How do you feel about this? Okay, let's talk about this. And so not just making decisions based on because I said so. Like my daughter said, she doesn't like that. She doesn't feel like it's a real answer, and she's truly valid for that. So my recommendation is have that conversation with your kids. Don't be afraid to ask them what they need. And honestly, if you don't have good communication with your kids now, it's going to take time. Don't expect for you to just walk into your kid's room. You don't have any open conversations with them, and for you to sit down and be like, hey, what can I do better as a parent? They may tell you, but odds are if you aren't close to them, they're going to shut down. And so in that aspect, I would say work on the closeness, work on that relationship because we don't get them for very long. My son is 16 years old and I always tell him I feel like I've only had him like 6 years. Time is flying by. And so to think that in 2 years he's going to be an adult and he can technically move out and be on his own is crazy. And so why not enjoy that time with them? Why not build that relationship? That way, when they are adults, they're not afraid to come back home or they want to come back home. I know that when I was younger, I couldn't wait to leave. I couldn't wait to be like, you know what? I don't have to come back. I get to live my life and do my thing. And I want to raise kids that do want to come back. I want to raise kids that do want to pick up the phone and be like, hey, mom, how was your day? Hey, mom, can I go see you this weekend? And I'm not saying that they can't live their life, but I'm just saying I want to give them so much love that when they leave me, they're like, yeah, I had a great childhood. I had a great upbringing and I miss my mom and I do want to see her and I do love her and I do want to make time for her. So at the end of the day, I am just trying to lead by example. And I'm grateful that I found this healing journey and that I'm on this healing journey because I'm also showing my kids that they don't have to be afraid to try different things. And, if something's outside the box or weird or odd, not to shut it down because they see their mom doing grounding work. They see their mom reading on vibrations and chakras, and they're like, they think it's a trip. Not gonna lie. They're like, what are you reading? And I'm like, yeah, this is what I'm reading. And I'm trying to teach them that it's okay to think for themselves and not, follow what other people are doing just because that's what you're supposed to do or that's what the norm is. And I want them to be individuals and think for themselves and follow their own journey, their own path, and just lead by example. And I know that if I can get a letter from my daughter that tells me, or my son that tells me, you know what, you've done a great job, and my goal is to be a parent like you, I hope I can get those kind of letters that you can too. And it's coming from, my children who were parented by somebody who had tons of traumas and who is broken and who is working on themselves. But my recommendation is never lose sight of the fact that your babies are with you for a short amount of time, and your job is to give them love and guidance without judgment. And they will never forget that. And so loving them unconditionally, but really unconditionally, and letting them see that there's nothing that they can do that's going to stop your love, because that's all that they need to be good human beings. That's all they need to spread love and joy and good energy when they get older. And like I said, I don't think anybody goes unscathed with childhood traumas. Nobody's that lucky. So don't be too hard on yourself. Have grace with yourself and know that you are learning, you are growing. And so you will make mistakes as a parent. But choose to have grace for yourself and see grace in those mistakes. And don't be afraid to tell your kids you're sorry. Just because you're the parent doesn't mean that you don't make mistakes. And so that would be it for me. I know this was kind of a different topic and maybe a little rambling going on, but something that I do hold near and dear to my heart. And I hope that I've shed some insight as to, what has helped me and maybe what can help you in your relationship with your children. But I wish you nothing but the best. I send you so much love, joy, peace, happiness. And until next time, I hope you have a great day. Bye.